You have to be inquisitive, know what questions to have, understand that you are responsible to do your due diligence. Nobody else is going to do it for you. If you are a deal lead, if you're signing on the loan as a key principal, you need to understand what's going on at their property and be able to dig into the numbers and look and do your financial due diligence, as well as visit the property.
Welcome to Real Estate Deal Closers with Anette, Talie, where we focus on the deals. Our guests are real estate closers who will share in detail the whole process from finding a deal to closing it, as well as strategies and tips to help you do the same. Here is your host, Anette, Talie.
Welcome to another episode of Deal Closers. I am your host, Anette, Talie, and my guest today is James Bryant. Welcome, James.
Hey, Annette, how are you doing?
I am doing wonderful. I'm so excited to have you on the show. We were together in a mastermind last year,
yes.
And so we got to know each other. I'm very excited for you to share one of your deals with us.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it.
All right, guys, let me tell you a little bit about James. He's a professional engineer, certified professional life coach, author, and a multifamily apartment investor. He empowers clients to transform problems into opportunities using the power of coaching combined with the insight he gained with over 20 years of experience in the public and private sector. James has invested in multifamily properties through joint ventures and has an ownership stake in over 80 units across 4 different complexes in Richmond, Virginia, and Greensboro, North Carolina. He focuses on workforce housing. He believes that mindset determines how you view the world, your life, and your circumstances. He believes that change starts with you, how you see the world, and how you choose to show up in life. Awesome, I like that. So, James,
yes.
Tell me, how did you get into real estate?
Well, I got into real estate because one of my really good friends really got the itch. We talked all the time. He started doing some flipping. And so he would flip some projects. I wasn't involved in any of the flipping projects. I would look at it and think of it, I'm not sure how that's going to go. And then one day he came and he said, man, I really found this deal that we should do. Okay, well, let me see. And he put together, a deal summary for a multifamily project. And that was a project here in Richmond, Virginia. And I then invested with him we invested with others to take on that project. It was a very small percentage stake in that project, maybe 5%. But after getting a taste of what the multifamily market had to offer, we decided to go full bore and begin to acquire units. And we focused on the Greensboro, North Carolina market. And so since 2017 is when we started, in 18 and 19, we've continually acquired properties. I said now we have over 4 complexes, a little over 82 units right now. And we're looking to continue to acquire more as it makes sense with the given circumstances that we have right now.
Absolutely. So what was the size of that first multifamily that you guys acquired?
It was, I think, a 23 unit complex. I think the purchase price on that one was 1.6 million, I believe. I may have some of the details a little fuzzy on that one. It's been a few years and we weren't really serving as the deal lead on that project.
Okay, so he went from flipping to 23 units. That's a big step.
Yes, flipping to 23 units. And it's an amazing story of how that project has unfolded. I think the project is really now starting to fit well, in terms of starting to perform and to be leased, and everything has been completed in terms of the rehabilitation. But that project was a bear. We basically had to take everything down to the studs in that one. So it was a full reposition.
Wow. Awesome.
The deal.
So now let's go to the deal that you want to talk about today.
Yes.
Tell me about your deal.
This deal is in Greensboro, North Carolina. It was the first property that we acquired in that market. It is a 20-unit townhome style, all brick complex. And, basically we saw it. It's like right on the cusp in a C plus B minus area, but an A apartment is right behind it, with a nice shopping center on the block over.
Mm-hmm.
And so we saw it, and actually we found it through mailers. We
Okay,
sent
so that's
mailers out.
you send mailers out and you found it. Okay.
Yes, we sent mailers out. We got a response from the mailer and began to talk to that current owner about acquiring that property. And so the negotiations were started at that point.
Wow, amazing. It's what rate of return do you have on those mailers?
Yeah, let's see. We sent out a bunch of mailers. We got a few responses. We closed one deal.
Okay. That was one time that you mailed.
Yes.
Okay, that's not bad for a one mailing to get like a 23 unit, you said?
This one's a 20 unit.
20 unit deal. That's not bad at all, actually, for a
No.
really good. All right. So what was the price, the initial price that was that the owner wanted for the 20 unit?
He wanted 880 initially.
Mm-hmm.
We eventually negotiated it down to 840.
Okay.
Also, there were some other reductions that happened, but in terms of the purchase price, it was 840.
Okay, and how did you negotiate that? What points led you to negotiate it down? Was it before the inspection or after the inspections?
Well, the interesting thing about, multifamily projects is that the banks view the finances based on the business. And so you're basically looking at the net operating income. And so a lot of the valuation is based on how well the property is actually operating the 12 months prior to when you're going to purchase it. And so a lot of the valuation methods that we use dealt with a really hard dive into the data, looking at what the owner provided and looking for the gaps at what the owner didn't provide and what was there, and making sure that we were able to ask the right questions.
Right. And was it an easy process, or was it, because sometimes, was it a mom and pop operation?
Yes, it was a mom and pop operator. So
Okay,
no, it was not an easy process.
because sometimes they feel the value is that and they are not willing to go down, right?
Not only that, or they know that they haven't invested into the property, and they know that there are some hidden things that are going to come up, and they want to do everything that they can to hide the data that may lead you to find out what that thing is.
So you have to be very inquisitive and know what questions to ask, right?
Yes. And you have to be inquisitive, know what questions to have, understand that, you are responsible to do your due diligence. Nobody else is going to do it for you. If you are a deal lead, if you're signing on the loan as a key principal, you need to understand what's going on at their property and be able to dig into the numbers and look and do your financial due diligence, as well as visit the property.
Absolutely. At what point do you visit the property? Do you do it before you make an offer, or do you do it after?
Well, we visited the property first, kind of did a quick tour to kind of make sure that there were no visible issues that you can see when we were making the initial offer. We knew that there was going to be some wiggle room after the initial offer was made, but we felt comfortable making an offer based on what we thought we would be able to get the rents in that area.
Awesome. So how much difference was in rent versus what you were acquiring? Did you have a big gap where you could increase rents?
Yes, there was a gap. The rents, when we acquired the property, I think the rents were about $500 a month. And we've actually been able to outperform our own analysis in the rents that we've been able to acquire in the renovated units. So the renovated units are now renting for $685.
Wow, that's pretty good.
And I think at this time in our analysis, we had 625 as being the number we were shooting for at this time out. from when we purchased it.
Wow, so that's even better than you anticipated.
Yes. Now, there were some other unanticipated issues that happened, as they always do. But we're very pleased with that particular project.
Awesome. All right. So, so did at this point were you already investing with the same partners, or how did you put this deal together? How did you finance it?
Well, myself and my main partner with the Myers Development Group, we were part of the hub, so to speak, to invest. And then we began to acquire other partners that wanted to invest in the joint venture. And so we talked to our friends and our family and people that were within our network. And we were able to raise like $250,000 for that deal.
Wow, that's amazing, because I think a lot of people don't realize that they can raise money from family and friends, people
Yes.
close to them.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a good deal and you know how to present it to other people, you know, they might invest with you. So you got to start with your close people, right? With your family and your friends. The same way you started with your friend, right? Your friend brought you the deal, and then you're like, oh, let me try this.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so in terms of the debt, how did you, what type of terms, how did you find this, what type of loan did you get?
We've been very fortunate, and we've been able to work with the community bank here in Virginia, actually. And so even though the property is in North Carolina, because I've served as a key principal on the deal and I'm a resident here in Virginia, we were able to use that community bank, and we got really favorable terms. I think it was something in the 4.5%. It was I think a 7-year loan with a 25-year amortization.
Okay, so that's pretty good. And what year was this?
This was in 2018.
2018. Okay, so you still have a few years with this loan, and
Yes.
the terms are awesome.
Yeah, we have a few years with the loan. The terms are awesome. We've used this lender on all of the large projects that that we've had, and have a very good working relationship with the lender.
Right. Do they require you certain numbers for the property, like the debt to ratio?
The debt coverage service ratio, yes, 1.5.
1.5. Oh, that's pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
1.5. Well, here in South Florida, before the pandemic, I could get 1.25.
Mm-hmm. They may require 1.25. I think we require, when we're looking at deals,
right,
if we're going to take it on, to be at least 1.5.
Right, that makes sense.
Because we want to make sure that we have some cushion.
Exactly. Yes. Especially right now, like reserves, so important, because nobody, you can plan for a recession and you can plan for, capital X, but like this type of situation, the pandemic,
yeah, you can't plan for everybody being out of work.
Yeah, that was something that nobody could, see coming. It was just out of the blue, and we're all in this together.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so what's your plan? What's your exit strategy for this property?
Well, now, we've reached the point where we're at 100% occupancy. And so we still have some units that we need to renovate, but we're at the point now, if it wasn't for what's happening in the markets at this point, we would be at the point we were ready to refinance or even look to sell it if we can get the right offer. And so we've talked about that. We've had a few meetings with our partners and talked about what the next steps are going to be. We've reached out to a couple of brokers to see if, what kind of numbers we would be able to sell it for, or what they think they would be able to get. And we're still negotiating with the brokers. But again, this was pre-COVID-19. Now we're in it, and we don't know what things are going to look like on the other side of this. So we're very comfortable. If we have to hold that property, we'll be fine.
Absolutely. You had a plan of, you have a 7-year loan. Your interest rate is great. So you have the ability to keep it for a longer time. And that's what I think everybody needs to aspire. When you are buying a property, don't buy it with the numbers so tight that if anything happens, then you are not going to perform.
Rest assured, something's going to happen. It's not if, it's when. And it could be a different thing each time, but something is going to happen.
Right.
One way or the other.
So on that note, you said that you had some unplanned things that happened with this property. Tell us about that.
Well, the first was, we did go in and inspect every unit. We looked at every unit, but I think the physical occupancy at the time when we were going to buy it was about 70%. But there were some units where they were vacant, and we didn't have the utilities turned on in those units when we did the inspections, because all of the utilities are separately metered. We didn't go through that extra step of having those utilities turned on. Well, that came back to bite us, because there was one unit in particular, the water was turned on. There was a big leak in the pipe upstairs. The water flowed downstairs. It, ruined the floor. We really had a large issue that we had to fix in that particular property that set us back. One of the other things that we saw is that the current owner, the former owner, was cannibalizing the appliances from the units that were vacant. If something went wrong with one of the properties that were leased, he would take the refrigerator or take the oven from that unit and put it in the other unit, and we didn't account for that either. And so those were some of the issues that we found in terms of the physical due diligence process. But there's also the difference between physical vacancy and economic vacancy. And economic vacancy was much lower than the physical vacancy in terms of the people that were actually paying rents. And so we had to work through that issue once we acquired the property as well.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So for the people that don't know, what's the difference? Well, obviously physical vacancies, people not there, but the economic vacancy, can you explain that?
Yeah, well, if you think of it in terms of, you can have the units 80% occupied, right? Let's say you have 10 units, 8 of the units are occupied, but only 5 of the units or people are paying rent. So your physical occupancy is 80%. Your economic occupancy is 50%.
50%.
And
Right,
that matters.
Yeah, but that should show on the T12, on the trailing the 12 months, right? Like who's paying?
It should show on the 12 months, but then you have the issue of people that they're about to sell. They may enter into a lease agreement, right up into the time where you're about to acquire the property, or you tell them not to do that anymore. I think that had happened to you in the past, I believe, where the former owner had a lease, and you got it, and you're like, what's going on?
Yeah, so they had a person I had 2 of those kind of. One was there was an empty unit and they were desperately trying to put somebody in there, and they put somebody. They did share with me the info. I didn't really like it, but that was the second application they sent, and they were really pushing for it, and they didn't want to miss a month's rent. So I was like, okay. They turned out to be okay paying rents, but they are smokers and they smoke inside, and there is no provisions on their lease that they cannot smoke inside.
Okay.
The apartment is basically ruined, and they had I actually asked them to do only a 6-month lease so I could, remove them if I didn't like them, right? Because I didn't know them. But then, once I realized that the apartment is ruined, I don't want to spend the money completely redoing the apartment right now. So yes. I decided I'm just gonna wait until they decide to leave. And when they decide to leave, because they are good payers, they pay.
Yeah.
So that's, the other one was that they had this lease that was ending right when I was taking possession of the property.
So we had a few of those. We had to get people, back in and do the month-to-month lease. So we had some recourse, but it was just you always have to look and do your investigation to make sure that the physical occupancy and economic occupancy are matching up.
Absolutely. And then you have, the ones that they tell you they have a lease, but then when you review all the paperwork, it's like a 2-year lease with a super low rate. And then
Yes.
you realize you can raise rents on those units, right? So then
Yes.
you have to wait.
And so that's all part of that due diligence process to make sure that you're looking at the paperwork, or you have someone on your team that's going to diligently be looking at the paperwork, looking at the utilities, making sure that, those things that are supposed to be covered by the owner is covered by the owner, and those things that are supposed to be covered by the resident are indeed covered by the resident. So we had to work through those issues. Another issue that we had is that it was really an epiphany for me when we did the inspection, and we're on site, and we're talking to the residents, and the residents are a little reluctant to share what's going on. But then as you continue to be around and you talk to them more, they start telling you some of the deferred maintenance type issues, like all of the windows being painted shut. You can't raise any of the windows, which is going to be an issue, particularly in the summertime. You have, elderly people that are there that, that need air, and all the other issues. And so we began to find out about that. And then we went to one unit, and it was absolutely atrocious. It broke my heart. There was a young lady. She had, a child in her arms and 2 other children kind of on her hip. And we go in there, and the sink was all just piled up with dirty water because the faucet was clogged up. And so the only way that they could undo that was they would take a bucket or a pan and take that water and dump it outside in the backyard.
Oh my God.
And then you could see water damage coming from a leak from the bathroom upstairs down in the kitchen. And basically the kitchen was, it looked like uninhabitable to me. And, I looked at my partner and I said, as owners, we have a responsibility to provide a decent place, a livable place for people to live. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be a slumlord. We need to make sure that we don't do this. This is not who we are. And it really broke my heart. And it also reinforced the whole mantra that I had, or still have, when we were in the mastermind, which is basically 5 years, 500 units, 500 lives. So in 5 years, I wanted to acquire 500 units so that I can impact the lives of over 500 families in a positive way. Because we're all about providing a really decent place for people to live, that, they're market rents, but they're going to be affordable. And we're going to clean up the area. We're absolutely going to clean up the area. We are not slumlords. And so we pride ourselves on that.
That's awesome. When I see things like that, and I think, they don't want to complain because they don't want to be kicked out.
Yep.
So they are just like, living like that. And, I love what you share about the tenants, because that's what I do. When I go to inspections, I just like start talking, or even when I just go to look at the place, for the first time. It's not even like an inspection, but they are, showing, and like, so I start talking to them, and like, so, any problems with the place? Like, what do you think about it? Anything that we need to fix? And
Mm-hmm.
they start spilling the beans. I mean, it's awesome. It's like,
Yep.
oh yeah, the toilet wasn't working, but that's fine. They just came again to pump the septic system. Oh, how many times do they pump the septic system? Oh, they do it once a month. I'm like, oh.
Let you know that there are problems.
There is a problem, of course. So that's a great tip to always talk, be very respectful and very thankful to them for letting you in their apartment, because some people don't want to get strangers in their apartment. So if you are just super thankful and friendly, they will share with you all this information that the owner doesn't want you to know.
Absolutely true.
Yes. All right. So how does your partnership work? You said that you have your main partner, but then you acquire other partners per project.
Yes.
Is that what you do?
Yes, that is correct.
So what do you do in the partnership?
Oh man. Well, I mean, it depends on the project in terms of whatever's done. Typically, what happens is that uh, Jerome Myers of the Myers Development Group, he does most of the legwork in identifying the property, and getting the information from the owner. Then he does his underwriting process. I do my own separate underwriting process, and then we try to meet on a price. Because I'm much more conservative than he is. I'm the one that wants to make sure that we have a whole bunch of reserves and that we can't pay this much money for it. It's crazy. We won't be able to make, our money. But if we based everything on my price, I don't think we would have ever acquired any deal because I would have always been too low for
But you
to
have that
acquire it.
balance, right? You have that
Yes.
balance of one of you being more aggressive and one being more conservative.
Yes. And so what we do is we talk through, we look at those numbers, and wherever there's a difference, we talk through the rationale as to why we think our number is right. And then we begin to understand the other side of that coin and say, okay, well, we can meet somewhere in the middle, or I think you're being a little bit too aggressive on how you can push the rents. And we come to an agreement and settle as to what that offer price is going to be. And then we both work through our network of family and friends to find additional partners to join the deal. Once we each deal has its own separate LLC, and that's just the way that each one is worked through. We have the ownership percentage within that LLC is based on the amount of capital or equity that you bring into the deal.
Oh, okay, interesting. That's awesome. All right, so what numbers do you use for your underwriting? Like, what do you use for reserve, for capex, vacancy? When you do underwriting, does it change by the project, or do you have kind of like your numbers?
It changes by the project. Depending on when we did the project, how the age of the units or the build of the property.
Mm,
And so some things change based on what we see in the inspection or what we see before the inspection when we do our drive-through.
mhm.
You know what? It looks like there's some drainage issues going on there. The roof looks bad. I can see that there's roof damage now. We're going to have to incorporate something for that, either on the reserve side for CapEx or on the price side as a takedown from that purchase price.
Absolutely. Yeah, the roofs here in Florida, at least, that's one of the main things for me. I always check the roofs. Big expense.
If I'm not mistaken, I saw you in a video or something up on the roof one day, right?
Yes, I was replacing a roof. Yeah, that video got a lot of traction. Yeah, I got all kinds of comments, positive and negative. It's like, get off the roof. What are you doing on the roof?
You're checking your investment.
Absolutely. I'm making sure that they are installing it as they are supposed to do it.
Yep. Yep.
Expert tips.
All right. So now you wanted to share with me 3 expert tips. What do you want to talk about?
Well, for me, it's, all the tips are in the same area: due diligence, and due diligence. You absolutely have to do your due diligence on these projects. Absolutely. You cannot take what the broker tells you, and you can't take even what the owner tells you as being, the standard. This is correct. You have to dig into the data and look. So you have to be able to look at the utilities. You have to be able to look at the rent rolls. And so you'll run into a situation, and we've looked at projects that are like this, that the current rents are, $550, but the market rents are $800. And so you should base your price off of the $800 in the market rent that you can get. And so my question always is, if I can get 800, why aren't you getting 800? It doesn't make sense to leave that much on the table. To not go after it. And so it's just really making sure that you pay close attention to detail to those numbers. I would say that's part of that due diligence. Part of that financial due diligence is also making sure that you have a counterbalance or a way to talk through your position on what your prices are, on what your estimates are, to make sure that it's solid. There's no, talking through it with someone like I have with Jerome. I'm much more conservative. He's much more aggressive in terms of pushing the rents and moving the project forward. And we meet at find a good place in the middle. And then the other is the economic occupancy and the difference between physical occupancy. Always make sure that the economic occupancy is what it's supposed to be.
Absolutely. That's so important. I learned the hard way. Awesome. All right, James. Thank you so much for being here today. Tell my listeners, where can they find you?
You can find me at betteryouforyou.com. And so that's the best place to reach me. You can get me on Facebook at betteryouforyou. And I'm also on Instagram, the same thing, Better You for You.
All right. You know what? Tell me about Better You for You. I'm looking at the logo and I want everybody to know, what is it?
Well, see, the logo is Better You for You, and that change starts here. So really change starts with you. There's a lot of external factors that can cause us to change, but a lot of the lasting changes that we have in life start with us. And so when we begin to take ownership of our lives and the results that we want in our lives, then you understand you can begin to change. And so the logo is a person looking in the mirror. And really we walk people through these processes that we call mirror moments, where you look at yourself for who you are, not who you project to be. And you got to get that it's not who you project, but what you're reflecting. So we can project to be, something that we're not, but who are you when nobody's looking? And you have to learn how to see yourself for who you are and accept yourself and love yourself and say, it's okay. This is me and this is okay. Then at that point, you have a foundation where you can move forward for any enhancements that you want to do, anything that you want to evolve from. You understand where you're coming from and you can begin to evolve into who you want to be.
Awesome. All right, guys. So if you want to, to help getting better and be you, call James.
Yes, please call me.
Thank you so much for adding so much value today.
All right. Thanks a lot, Annette.
Awesome.
This was Real Estate Deal Closers with Anette Talie, brought to you by Talie Investments. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. Our goal is to provide amazing value on your real estate journey. Connect online at www.talieinvestments.com, where you can find this episode and more. Did you like this episode? Subscribe, like, and share.